All right, all right. It looks like we're going live. Hey, everybody, it's JJ Conway. I want to welcome you to our Think and Grow Rich lesson tonight. Now, some of you who are local to Stephenville, you're going to look at me and say, she's wearing the wrong purple hoodie. Now, this is my husband's alma mater, Northwestern State, in Natchitoches, Louisiana, may be familiar to many of you as where they filmed Steel Magnolias. All right. But today is our Think and Grow Rich lesson. I acknowledge that I am like 2 hours late teaching it. So if you're watching this live, I do apologize. If you're watching this as a replay, I do acknowledge that you're not supposed to apologize. Never, what is that phrase? Never apologize because your friends don't care and your enemies won't listen, right? But the thing is we did have a storm and our power went out for a little bit, and our and quite frankly, because I didn't check the clocks are correct, I lost track of time while I was prepping for the lesson, which means it's an awesome lesson for you today. Okay, so I've been having a blast with our lesson, our Think and Grow Rich lesson, and honestly, y'all, this is the first time I've really been able to enjoy teaching it since my dad passed away in the middle of the class 4 years ago. So it's kind of like I'm taking back what the enemy stole through grief. And so, by way of announcements, I'll be in North Dallas Worship Center this Saturday, speaking at the Southwest Jurisdictional Elect Ladies Conference, 10 a.m. It's free, so just come on by, 645 South Custer in Allen, Texas. I'll also be speaking at SpeakerCon Wednesday afternoon, the first, yeah, that's next week. The first of, I gotta look at my calendar. The first of November. So if you'd like to join me as my guest, please send me a private message no later than 12 noon Sunday the 29th. Okay, there's a handful of slots left. And I've got a few people that are allowed to come who can help me. I don't need the help because I'm coming in and out. Got to be back for senior night, y'all. So I'm not bringing stuff to sell. But, you know, if you want to take the slot, why let a good slot go to waste? It's great content. Dr. Cheryl Wood puts on an amazing conference. You are going to get $500 worth of value just for being my friend. Thank you for being my friend, right? All right. Let's get on the lesson today. We are going to be talking about, again, Think and Grow Rich. We're going to be talking about the chapter on faith. And this is another big one, y'all. We could do the whole lesson on just the first few lines. Just the first few lines. Now, look, if you have the electronic copy of the book, or if you have the physical copy of the book, you will note that on the side are the lines. And in case you missed the intro as to why we do it that way, it's because it makes it easy for you to follow along. So if you don't have this version of the book, I encourage you to either buy it on Amazon, which the link should be in the description for the video, or you can go get the class, which is where down here, look, I put a short link this time, y'all, jjclink.com/TAGR5 for Think and Grow Rich 5. That's the 5th year we've been teaching it. Okay. That'll take you to the class, and there's an ebook version in there. Okay. So we're in chapter 3, faith, visualization of, and belief in attainment of desire. And he says here, faith is the head chemist of the mind. When faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration and translates it into its spiritual equivalent and transmits it to infinite intelligence, as in the case of prayer. Now, he's got infinite intelligence here capitalized. I think most of us understand that to mean the Lord. I encourage you to take a look at our first video where I talk about the difference between when business people say God or source or spirit, and when JJ Conway says God or source or spirit or infinite intelligence. Okay, we'll bring a little bit of that out as we go through our content today, but I just wanted to put that out there. I want to make sure you know very clearly where we stand on things like that. Now, Wallace Wattles in the studies, the Science of Getting Rich, which is this Authentic Abundance, is a class based on that, said that prayer is the movement that takes place between the finite mind of man and the infinite mind of God, the communication channel. Now, I'm not 100% sold on that definition, but I like that definition a lot better than the current wind of thought going through in today's churches, where prayer and meditation is this passive thing where you sit and you empty your mind of everything and you just receive. Okay, my faith, my God, my expression, my scriptures, they're all active, not passive. There are times we sit in silence. There are times where we be still. Absolutely, but it's not a passivity. Okay, and so prayer, especially prayer in the spirit, is a communication channel open between you and the Lord. You transmit to him, he transmits to you. Okay. These first four lines, I think it really is a model for thinking. It's a model of how we think and a model of how we communicate with infinite intelligence, the mind of God. And if you go back to 2 weeks ago, it might have been our very first kind of deep, or it might have been the deep dive in the private session that we did. But one of those two, we introduced the idea that we are spiritual beings, gifted with an intellect and living in a physical body. So now let's separate Think and Grow Rich from what I do the rest of the week. If you've come to my Bible study, you know that this is called the tripart model of man. It's taught heavily in Watchman Nee, based on scriptures that talk about body, soul, and spirit of man being three parts. Okay. So the intellect is part of our soul. It's the seat of our personality with our emotions and our affections and our desires and all those things. It's what makes us us. And so we have ideas that we become aware of in our mind, and we could say, well, where did those ideas come from? We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but through spirit, certainly through spirit, we can become aware of an idea. And it's our expectation that the idea will move into what we call a result. It might be God's expectation that the idea moves from spirit to us and to a result, right? So from spirit to us, the intellectual mind of man, the spiritual center of or the center of our spirit being communion and intuition, in expressed through our intellect, and being expressed through this physical body, and then given back to infinite intelligence, given back to the Lord. So if you read that and just look through, think these first four lines. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. When faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration, translates it to its spiritual equivalent, and transmits it to infinite intelligence, as in the case of prayer. It comes through the spirit, we give it back to the Lord. All right. Now, this whole idea of vibration we talked about last time. We talked about being at a certain a certain level of where we're living an idea. Then we have a higher idea, and we have to try and allow our energy to get up in that way. But I also want you to think of this like a tuning fork, which I meant to bring one and I forgot. So we're just going to play imaginary today. Okay. So imagine that my fingers are an imaginary tuning fork. Now, if I cling it, it goes, it's gonna cling at the note C on the piano, right? Similarly, though, if I hit the note C on the piano, the tuning fork is going to start vibrating and it's going to start humming. Okay, I don't know if that was a C. I don't know music like that. My husband does, right? Um, but but it's interesting how the tuning fork picks up the vibration of the sound waves from the piano and begins to hum itself. That's what's happening in the energetic levels of our mind when we're tuned in to what is being given to us. Okay. So notice that what's happening here is he's suggesting that we take these ideas and we're sending it back up. So the ideas come from spirit to us. And then as we get the idea, we begin to add to it. We filter it through our personality and our desires and all those things. We begin to work with it. Then we send it back up as a directive. We flesh out the idea and then we send it back up as what we want. Okay. And really in prayer, a lot of times in prayer, how do I want to say this? Because I don't want to offend. Well, never mind. I don't care about offending people anymore. I was about to say I don't want to offend people, but I already have. So, but in prayer, a lot of times we have things and we have ideas and we bring them before the Lord, and we think it's just us, right? But it's really a spiritual principle. Even if it comes from the Lord, by the time it filters through your imagination and your personality and all that, you got to bring it back out and make sure, hey, is this really what we're doing here? Because there's times where my ego and my affections, they kind of warp the idea a little bit. We're not going to talk about that today, because what we're really going to be talking about today is how many of us, we haven't gotten to the point of taking action on the ideas yet. Okay. Instead, we're like, send me a sign, send me a sign, send me a sign. And then the Lord sends us an idea. And we're like, well, I can't do that. So we're not. So once you push past that, then we have the other problem. Does that make sense today? I don't want people to think I'm ignoring part of the struggle, but the biggest struggle that most of you have that are watching me today or listening to me, if you're listening to the downloadable MP3 that we're going to make for the people in the class from this lesson, most of the problem is not the too much ideas, and too much follow through and not enough prayer. It's the too much prayer and not enough movement. Okay. Okay. So I do want to make this caveat. We're talking about faith. He is not talking about faith in Christ Jesus. He is using faith in Christ Jesus, faith in, whatever else you have faith in whatever your faith expression is, your religion and all those things. Generally, most of the people on my channel have faith in Christ Jesus, which is, we want everybody, so you can be here. It's fine. But that's where I am. That's where I come from. But he uses that as a parallel. But really what he's talking about here is faith in the dream, faith in the desire. So I'm going to make a caveat here that if you're not already offended with me, and you're only here for the business aspect of Think and Grow Rich, this is going to make you cringe. I don't believe that all ideas flow from God. I don't. In fact, my favorite book tells us that there are those who tap into ideas of evil and those who seek out evil ways to use good things. And so, since in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, he established the universe and the universal laws through which energy and ideas flow. And since we established last time in the public class, and we really dug into the science behind it in the closed session, that we're all connected through these universal laws and the universal operation of these universal laws, which is why the ideas flow throughout the universe like that. That's why you can be thinking of somebody and they call you, or you can have this amazing idea and somebody on the other side of the world has the same idea and pursues it at the same time. Or more often, we don't pursue it, and then 2 years later somebody's got it on TV and we're like, I had that idea, I could have been rich, right? So while a lot of business gurus and motivational speakers will teach you that there's only one source of supply of ideas, I'm going to remind you to heed 1 John, the 4th chapter, where it starts off saying, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they're of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Okay. So the rest of our discussion today requires then that when the idea has come to you, oh person of faith, you have evaluated it through the lens of Scripture to ensure it does not contradict Scripture, and you have laid it at the foot of the cross to ensure that it aligns with God's perfect will for you. I take 2 Corinthians 10:5 very seriously. Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now, a lot of people use that scripture to manipulate Christians into denying the power of their intellect and imagination. But this does not say you can't use those faculties. In fact, I would argue that God wouldn't have given you those faculties if he didn't want you to actually use them. It really means evaluate them and cast down anything that's inconsistent with the will of God as expressed to you in prayer or in Scripture. Because some ideas that come to you may be a distraction. They may be a false doctrine. They may be a false prophet. Okay. So with that foundation set, we can take a deeper dive into this chapter on faith. And we can look at, let me grab, y'all know I love to grab me some paper and some markers. Let me grab some paper and some markers really quick. And some of you have seen this before. If we can just let this represent ourselves, okay? If we can just let this represent ourselves, you've heard this called of the stick man. We can say that our mind represents two parts, okay? So we can say that there's a conscious part, and then there's a non-conscious part to our mind, okay? There's conscious and non-conscious. Can you see that okay? conscious and non-conscious, okay? And so each of these parts does different things. Uh-oh. What happened? What happened? The ultimate AI photo. What? Why is this on here? You know what? These people need to get off my computer. I don't know who allowed them to put all these ads on my computer. I know I didn't mean to. I have to go back and do that. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I hope y'all y'all probably saw that. Anyway, let's go back to what I was saying. Okay, so we're going to use this drawing of the stick man as a model for our mind. Okay, we've got the conscious mind and the non-conscious mind, and each one of these parts does different things. Our conscious mind is kind of our thinking mind, right? It's where we have the ideas and we're aware of it. It's where our awareness lies. Now our subconscious mind is really our emotional mind. It's our feeling mind. And in our subconscious mind is stored all of this programming, all of our experiences, everything we've learned and collected and gathered, all the baggage. Everything is there, both positive and negative, in the non-conscious mind. All the emotional stuff, everything you experience. And the stronger the emotion, the stronger lodged it gets into this non-conscious mind. And so it's everything we've ever experienced. And some people say it's from the time of the birth, but I'm gonna tell you what, right now, I'm one of those people that believe it's from the moment of conception. Like at the moment of conception, everything begins to become stored here. And I'm gonna show you why. Let me see if I can share my screen. I mean, I know I can share my screen. Let me just see if I can do it correctly and in a timely manner. I'm going to show you on screen why I say this, okay? So what you should be seeing on the screen right now is probably not the most flattering picture of me that you will ever see. All right, let me make that bigger. Okay, this is my cell phone, my old cell phone, laying on top of my big old pregnant belly. Okay. And this song that's playing is one of the ones that my husband said would be great to play for the baby. Well, the baby had this routine. And the routine with the baby was he wanted to hear this song every night. You know how I know he wanted to hear this song? Let me tell you how I know he wanted to hear this song every night before he went to bed. Because if I did not play this song, he would kick and kick and kick and kick and kick until I finally played it. And then after I played it, he would go to sleep, which would mean I would go to sleep. But watch what happens as we play the song. And this is not even the most forceful of it, y'all. There's one time he got so into the song, he knocked this thing off my belly. All right, let me go and watch what happens. Watch what happens. See him moving around there? He's moving to the music. He is moving to the music. He's wiggling and jiggling to some of the parts. And there's parts where he gets really into it. And like I was saying, as I was keying this up, as I was saying, like when I was keying this up, there are times, there was one time where he got so into it that at a particular swell in the music, he did something and knocked the phone off my belly. You can't tell me that experiences and the mind doesn't begin until after they come out the womb. Okay, you can't tell me that, and you can't tell me that experiences even in the womb matter. And it's funny because today we don't believe that as a culture. Our our current culture denies this. But back when I was younger, the doctors used to tell people, if you wanted a happy baby, strive for a happy, reduced stress pregnancy. And there were all these things about having surrogates. You always heard about having surrogates because that became a thing when I was younger, and how a lot of people were having trouble with the babies from surrogates because they were in stressful situations. They were poor people in poor countries. And so then they made this big move to put them in happy places where they can have a nice, easy pregnancy, right? Like, because people knew this back then. And so we're talking about this idea that we have ideas here in our conscious mind, when we turn them back over to our non-conscious mind, okay, really our spiritual center, and then we become aware of the ideas. And if we think about it, there's only a couple of places where we get ideas from, okay? Sometimes we get ideas from our outside world. We might call this the environment, right? You know, these are, I have to be careful how I do this. One time I did this and it looked demonic. So I have to be careful how we do this. But through our senses, I'll just write senses, right? Senses. It's like we're like little antennas. Sight, smell, etc. Okay, we take things in through our senses. That's how we interact with the physical world in the conscious sense. Okay, and so all of that's feeding in, and then as it becomes combined with emotion, it gets lodged in the non-conscious brain. And the stronger an emotion that is evoked when something happens, the stronger that foothold gets in our non-conscious mind, right? So what are some things from the environment? Well, other people. Other people send in their ideas. Other people send in their judgments. Things we say, the things we look at, everything around us, the TV, the newspaper, radio, gossiping neighbors, another, and all these things feed in. And one of the reasons you might see, like, especially if you look at old time things, or you look at older religious standards that are like kind of like in some places it's just kind of a formality or a tradition, but it was really based on this concept that before age 12 we really couldn't accept or reject ideas. They just came in. They came in and they came in. But around about age 12 or 13 or so, the age of accountability, I think they call it, the age of reason, we're able to accept or reject ideas. But up until then, we've already been programmed with a whole ton of stuff. A whole bunch of stuff has come in here. A whole bunch of emotional experiences have already lodged themselves in. I know this whole thing, this whole idea can be a little scary. Well, let me tell you something else that's divisive. Another place we can get ideas is from that past programming. And we don't like to talk about that, and we don't like to believe it, and we certainly don't like to be judgy in this culture, don't we? But our past programming, it forms our belief, it forms who we are. That doesn't work. Not a nice person there, not a good person over here. Positive and negative judgments and beliefs. And I don't want to say that the negative beliefs are more charged, but for most of our personalities, we tend to pay more attention to the negative things because there's usually pain involved with it. Guilt, fear, shame, anger. We'll do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So that's a second way that ideas come to us, from our programming. They arise out of the programming. It's like an auto program is coming up and it spits out an idea, usually an idea that's not going to help us move forward. And then a third way that we get ideas is from spirit, certainly from the mind of God. And in this whole process, the head chemist of this mind diagram, Napoleon Hill saying, is faith. Now, he's going to talk later about synthetic faith and creative faith. We're going to talk about that later in the book. But I'm going to talk today about two kinds of faith: blind faith and faith based on understanding. Now, that's what we're going to get into. So just give me a second here. We go into this idea. Let me go back to this idea of the baggage that we're carrying. Okay. So we have limiting beliefs. Okay. And then we have some repressed emotions, the guilt, the anger, the fear, all of that kind of the shame. Oh yeah, shame for sure, right? And we've got our conditioning, and it's what we've learned. And so this makes up our beliefs. It's the things that we know to be true. Actually, we believe them to be true, but whether or not they are true is a different matter. And so up here in our conscious mind, our conscious mind, these are the thoughts that we're thinking, that we're actively thinking. And if this is influenced by this, and it's in harmony and it feels right, then it's a fit. Okay? So if some idea comes in from the outside, okay, if the idea comes in from the outside and it's coming from our environment, it's probably a fit, because our conditioning in our environment tend to be a match. All right. But if it's a new idea, or if it's from infinite intelligence, God, then this doesn't match. And it could be a really positive idea. Okay. And it could be a positive idea that feels wrong. It feels like, oh no, that's not right. I can't do it, because it doesn't resonate y'all probably can't see how I drew this. Okay, let me try doing it a different way. So I drove this one wavy, okay? And then this one I'm going to make it more distinct on here. You guys may not have noticed that from the picture. Okay, so I made this one sharp, and I made this one wavy. This one is wavy. We already are tuned to thinking wavy thoughts. So when the wavy thought comes in, we're like, oh, yeah, that feels right. Okay, okay. But this thought coming from the Lord, trying to take us at a higher level, trying to get us on a higher vibration, okay? This thought from the Lord is a sharp thought. Let me back up here and let it focus. This thought from the Lord is a sharp thought. We don't have anything in our background and our faith and our experiences and our environment that matches a sharp faith. So we reject it. Is it easy to have faith? Well, it's easy to have faith when it's in harmony. It's easy to have faith in the idea when the squiggly idea is the same squiggly idea you've been operating on autopilot. When the idea matches what you expect and what you believe, it matches your conditioning, easy peasy. I believe that all day. You know, if you tell me that what's one that I had to really work to overcome. Oh, y'all. All right. If you told me that marriage was just a situation where the woman does all the work and the guy lays around watching X-rated videos and eating the food she cooks, if you'd have told me that 20 years ago, that wavy thought was really attuned to what I grew up with, is a wavy thought. My mom worked to the bone, and my mom did all the things, and my dad relaxed and had a good old time. And if you'd have told me that that's what marriage was, I would have accepted that. I would not have challenged it because it already matched and it felt right. And some of us today, we have accepted things that felt right, but they aren't right. But then the other idea comes along that marriage should be a partnership. Well, I don't have any reference for marriage being a partnership. I don't have any reference for marriage being anything other than one-sided. So I reject this thought. Or I can make the choice. To have faith based on understanding. I don't have any resonance with a triangular thoughts here, or sharp thoughts here, sharp corner thoughts here. But I'm going to understand that other people do have, and I'm going to understand that it is possible to have. And so then I can begin to shift my understanding and tune in greater. And at first, it might just be a little thought. It might just be a little one. Well, actually, I shouldn't have put that down there yet. I should put it here because that's where it starts. It might just be a little one. I think about it and I accept it and I think, and I play around with it and I dream about it. And intellectually, I am telling my brain to think at this higher level, this green level. I'm telling my brain to think at this higher level. And what's happening in the emotional side is I'm thinking at the higher level a little bit consciously. And then in the emotional level, I am now building an imprint for that dream. Y'all, if you can get this, it will be well worth the price of admission for Think and Grow Rich. So I, if you're like, I need to hear that again, I encourage you to go to the link underneath my name. It's jjclink.com/TAGR5 for Think and Grow Rich 5. I want you to look at this chart and hear what I'm saying over and over again till you understand it and you can adapt it, because this right here will change everything about your life. It'll change everything about your business success. It'll change everything about your relationships. So the goal here is really to have some congruency, right? Ultimately, we want congruency between the dream coming in and the foundation within our subconscious and in our conscious mind, right? But if you're not getting the results you want, you're going to have to put up with the incongruity until it becomes a new kind of norm. And that's reprogramming. So let me illustrate it again, okay? I'm using marriage because I don't want to step on anybody's toes about a business idea, and I can't think of a business idea real quick, but the marriage idea is very applicable in my life, okay? So the wavy thought comes in from outside sources. Marriage is just a one-sided thing. The woman does all the work and the man doesn't do anything, which is why a lot of feminists are like, "Oh man, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." Why? Because they had a lot of one-sided relationships. They didn't have partnerships, you know. And so when the thought comes to you from on high, hey, marriage can be a partnership. If you don't have a reference for that in your non-conscious mind, you don't, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't feel good. This feels good. This isn't good, but this feels good because I already know it. It's like the warm diaper analogy. It's stinky, but it's mine. It's warm and it's mine. Okay. But if I will allow my conscious brain to consider the idea when it comes in, and I start playing around, it's just a little teeny tiny. It's just a little teeny tiny. Can you see that there? Just a little teeny tiny sharp idea. Because I'm not familiar with it. It's new. It's not normal for me. It's different. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. What feels good is the old way. What feels good is the old way. This doesn't feel good yet. But as I consider it and I think about it, and I actively tell my non-conscious brain, I want you to consider this. The more and more and more I do that, the more and more and more it gets well seated. And as I imagine it, and I begin to experience the emotion of how amazing it would be to be in a relationship with somebody who's a good partner for me, that emotion seats it in my non-conscious brain. And over time, this becomes the new norm. And over time, the new thought, over time, the new thought begins to crowd out the old thought. Now, I'm not saying the old thought automatically goes away. There's some thoughts that they're just going to always be there. There's a lesson one of my mentors taught. It never goes away, but you learn to out-program it. So then you stop operating from those old wavy thoughts and you start programming according to the new sharp thoughts. I hope this is making good sense for you today because I'm having so much fun drawing this out. Okay. Really, it's reprogramming. And oftentimes when we talk about reprogramming, it's not that most of us are reprogramming so much as we're creating something entirely new. You know, we lived all our life in poverty. And then we went to college and we got a good old government job. So where we had nothing, now we have, maybe now we're making 20,000 a year, 30,000 a year, maybe 40,000 a year. And now we're trying to dream of 1 million a year. Well, we're not used to all that. We have to create something new. Many of us are creating something new. And so it might be for you one or two specific beliefs, changes to one or two beliefs. And the thing is, you'll hear other people who teach this kind of thing. They'll tell you, well, if you want to kill that old belief, you want to remove that old belief. Well, the old belief is energy. It never goes away. You notice when I drew the new belief that's grown, because first we thought about it, then we allowed ourselves to imagine it, and then we combined that imagining with emotion. It got deeper seated, and the more and more we imagine our dream, the more stronger it gets. But notice, I didn't call the way cover up the old thing. The old thing is still energy in us. It can't be created or destroyed. That's why you think you're over the hurt of a bad relationship or you're over the guilt of something that you may have done 20 years ago. And out of the boom, something happens and boom, it's like yesterday. You feel it all over again. It's still in your energetic field. But the good news is, as we said in an earlier lesson, our minds become magnets for the dominating thoughts, which we allow to permeate and penetrate and be expressed within and through us. There's also, we talked about in the last public class, the transmutation of energy, changing it from one thing to another. So we can take this new idea. And even though this new idea is far beyond what our current belief says we can have, so this new idea of me, I have this idea that I can earn in my entrepreneurial endeavor an extra 40,000 a year, an extra 60,000 a year, an extra $1 million a year. It's far beyond what I'm currently believing because right now my results are 20,000 a year. It's what I'm making at my dead end job, right? I can begin to override that old belief and I can hold on to that. But it's gonna take faith. It's gonna take faith. I got to have faith in this new idea. And that faith has to be faith on understanding. It can't just be kind of wishful thinking and keep faking it till you make it and really stressing down deep inside. It's got to be explored at a level that it becomes truly what you feel, what you believe. Otherwise, you're probably not going to do what's necessary. And you know what he says in the book? He says in the book, I'm going to find it here in a second. He says in the book, you can tell yourself a lie enough times, you will ultimately believe it. All right. So it's in here. It's in here. It's on page 60, 61. 61. Nope, that's not it. That's not the one I want. Lie. There it is. Okay, page 59. Page 59, line 121. If a man repeats a lie over and over, he will eventually accept the lie as truth. Moreover, he will believe it to be truth. What? Every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts which he permits to occupy his mind. Ooh, y'all. Yeah, we've heard this phrase about a lie at work, right? We joke about it in the corporate thing. Say something enough times it becomes true, right? Say a lie enough times it becomes true. That's really what he's saying here. Your raggedy coworker goes, I shouldn't use the word raggedy. I'm talking about being elevated in character. Y'all forgive me. But your coworker goes in the meeting and they say something that's not true. And the first time nobody pays it much mind. The second time people start to consider it. The third time it's already accepted as fact. It's not fact. It just is. It's the same with our minds. Because of the dominating thoughts which we allow to occupy our mind is going to determine what we really believe to be truth. And so if our results have betrayed us that what we're believing isn't conducive to our success, if what we have believed up till now, the result of those beliefs is a life that is up and down, sometimes successful, sometimes not, well, then what we can do is we can develop understanding. And that doesn't mean we always know how to make something happen, but we can understand the principles behind making it happen, and we can execute the principles behind making it happen. We can control our outputs, we can control our behavior, we can control our thinking. Sometimes we can't control the results, but we can control all the other things. And if we do all the other things that are within our control to do, eventually we'll have the success that we should have, some sooner than later. I've spent a lot of time the last 20 years or so trying to understand this process of how do we take an idea that's far beyond what we currently create and what we currently have in our lives, and how do we allow that idea to become the dominant energy of our being? What is that process? And although I've gained that understanding now, I didn't have that understanding before I built wealth. And I was still able to build wealth. I was still able to climb out of a net worth of negative $845,000, right? But I didn't understand the process. I was just doing. But to reach higher levels, and some of you, you're successful today, but to reach higher levels, we gotta understand the process. And this framework breaks it down so that anybody can have the same success. And so we want to have faith in the understanding of who we are, how we operate, the laws of our being, the intellectual faculties. And if you'll stay committed during this program, we're going to take you through all of that. Okay. We're going to dig into it, the subconscious mind, the brain, even y'all, even the concept of sixth sense. And we're really going to examine all those concepts through the lens of the Word of God. And so if you'll stay committed, for some of you, you will want to study it longer. You'll want to replay it and really work through the application lessons. And if you want, at any time, if you think that you'd like to have access to the lessons longer than the couple of days that they stay live for, you just click on the link that's in the description. You can go to jjclink.com/TAGR5. And for $99, you have it for the rest of your life. And so this part of us, this belief of what we believe to be true about us in the world and about the world and everyone in it, it's very cunning. It's very cunning, isn't it? Because it leads us to stay the same, and new ideas are not welcome. We'll reject those new ideas. We'll reject those new ideas. Let me cover that back up. We reject the new ideas, even though, like for instance, I'm teaching a seminar. How many of you would like to have your annual income and turn it into a monthly income? Every hand goes up. Everybody wants it. But then when I get to kind of probe with somebody, okay, so what would you do? The first thing they tell me isn't what they would do, it's what's not going to work. And they tell me that I don't understand. It's like you don't understand. I live in a small town. Well, I live in a small town. You don't understand. I don't have the support of my spouse. Well, I didn't have the support of my spouse. Well, you don't understand. I failed in the past. Trust me, I failed in the past. And it's not that I don't understand. It's not that I don't understand. I get it. I understand about every obstacle somebody could have in their success. I'm pretty sure I've lived through it. Okay, whether it's being slow, being labeled slow in kindergarten, whether it's being a woman in a man's domain, a man's world, whether it's being a person of color, whether it's being a single mom for a period of my life after the divorce, right? Like not having to support a family and friends. I'm pretty sure I understand. It's not that I don't understand. It's that I haven't bought into the story. I haven't bought into that belief system. BS. Capital B for belief, capital S for system. I haven't bought into that belief system. They've convinced themselves that it's not going to happen. And it's so convincing. It's one of those wavy thoughts we grew up with, and it's so comfortable to us. But if you begin to analyze some of the things, and if you have someone like me who's saying, have you really thought this through? What is that based on? What is that thought based on? Is it realistic? Is it logical? Does it help you? Have you challenged yourself? Have you tried? Have you tried everything? Have you tried anything? Well, I already know this won't work. I already know that won't work. I remember one time we were doing a thing and there was a woman who came out, and I was talking about the power of mentoring or coaching or something like that, because, to have somebody come into your life and be able to speak that frankly with you and be honest with you takes a couple things. Either you build a relationship slowly over time, or you enter into a mentoring relationship that usually requires a little bit of money, right? And she didn't have the money. And I was like, well, have you thought about tutoring? She worked at a school. They can always use tutors. Well, that won't work because, okay. Have you thought about babysitting maybe? No, that wouldn't work. Have you thought about delivering pizzas on Saturday? No, that won't work because, okay, driving for Uber, working one of those hotel registration centers, the kind you call when you work from home. You don't even have to leave the kiddos, right? Virtual VA, making phone calls. And she had a reason why it wouldn't work for everything I said. And finally, it was like, okay, fine. You know what? You win. You are absolutely the one person that cannot have their dream. You convince me. Oh, no. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. Yeah, it is. It's what you're fighting for. It's what you're fighting for. It's what you're fighting for. And we don't even realize we're doing it. What are you fighting for? What are you fighting for? What have you been fighting for in your protest that this won't work and that won't work and this isn't going to happen? You know what else? You know what else is down here? All of our habits, the things that we do without thinking about it, or the things that become so entrenched and ingrained in us that we almost can't stop doing them. How many? Don't raise your hands. Don't jump it in the chat unless you're, but how many of you have smoked? I remember when I was in college and I actually tried to smoke a cigarette. When you start to smoke and you take that first puff, you weren't the cool Marlboro man. Like, you don't take your first puff of cigarette and you're like, oh wow, yeah, like I want to do 20 years of that. I mean, it's like coughing up half a lung. You have to work hard for smoking to become a habit. You have to tolerate the poison until you eventually love it. It's nasty and you smell like an ashtray, but everybody else is doing it. So you introduce it over and over and over, and it becomes fixed and it becomes a habit. The next thing you know, you wake up and the first thing you want is a cigarette. And after you eat, of course, you got to have a cigarette. Before you go to bed, you got to have a cigarette. If you're going to drive, well, you need a cigarette. And if you're on the phone, what should you have? A cigarette. And before you know it, it owns you. And we don't even realize that we fight against what we want, and it becomes a habit. We defend that which does not serve us, and it becomes a habit. And then because we'd rather be right than wrong, then we go ahead and have it so we don't let go. Because to let go would be admitting that we fought for something we said we didn't want. And once it's in here, people will fight for what's familiar rather than what they want. So I'm going to ask you again, what are you fighting for? So talking about faith, okay, when the new idea and the beliefs are in harmony, when there's congruence between the two, it's a wavy thought, and you're used to wavy thoughts, which you can't see under there. For those of you just joining us, there's a wavy thought under that big one. It's easy to have faith. Maybe the fear is the harmony. So there's fear in the faith and faith in our dream. And really, you can't have faith in both, can't you? You can have faith in your dream and you can have faith in your doubts. And normally, people have much more faith in their fear and doubts than they will in what it is that they want. And actually, when you think about it, where's the evidence for either one? There's no evidence that your dream is possible other than how you feel about it, how you're inspired about it. And honestly, there's no evidence that your fear is real either, other than how you feel about it. They're both steps of faith. But we tend to be more comfortable with what is going to keep us away from what we do want. And I think that's where we have to introduce understanding and awareness. And that's why we gain understanding and awareness through repetition. It's the introduction of a new idea. Okay. It's an introduction of a new idea and the challenging of an old belief that over time eventually leads to a new discovery for you. And then that's why it's so important. It's so important for you to know these concepts. Now, I've got this lesson for you. It's going to be up for the next 72 hours. I'm going to leave the intro one up forever, right? But the rest of these are going to disappear. They're going to be removed from the server after 72 hours. I don't know about LinkedIn, but I think the other platforms pull them. When I pull them off the server, I think the other platforms say this video is no longer available or something like that, okay? So now if you have the time, I want you to go back and listen to this lesson 2 or 3 times. 72 hours is enough time to get you through the weekend. You go to your son's game, pop it in your headsets and listen to it. Listen to it over and over and over and over for those 72 hours to give the idea an opportunity to really land so that you gain an understanding, like understanding how these laws of our being work. Really understand how we use our intellectual faculties as mental muscles to create and design the life we want, and then have faith in that understanding. It's that faith and understanding that when I'm faced with doubt because of the lack of real evidence in my life, that I can rely on my faith and understanding even though I don't see it. I don't know how to do it. I don't know where the money's going to come from. I don't know where the talent's going to come from. I don't know where the skill's going to come from, but I know it's coming. And I don't need to know where it's coming from. It's going to come from the only place it can come from source, from the Lord, from spiritual source. And spiritual source only creates 2 ways, perfectly and abundantly. And if I trust and have faith in that, I'm good. Have any of you ever done a ropes course? So you get like 50, 70 feet high and you're going from thing to thing and you're kind of clipped in there, right? And then sometimes you might have a zip line in that, but you're basically climbing around in the sky on wobbly ropes, right? Before you go up, you get a little training, and they start off with this little rope or sometimes a small bar. I mean, you're only like 12, maybe 18 inches off the ground, right? So it's doable. You can see with your eyes, this is not a threat. And you get on that thing, and unless you're comfortable, it feels like you're 100 feet up. Your fear is outsmarting reality. In reality, you're a foot off the ground, but you get on top of that top of that thing, and it feels like you're way up there. How many of us still can't walk across the rope, even though intellectually we're telling ourselves it's fine? And then when they start the training from when they clip you into the ropes course and they going through it and they're telling you what you need to do, and you've got the clips, you got the 2 clips, and you get to this junction and you're going to clip this one over here, and then you're going to move this one and clip it over, and you're going to walk to the next piece of rope where it merges with others, and you're going to get on that next platform and you're going to clip, you're going to clip. And there's a lot of things to it if you've not done it before, but they tell you These clips is how you stay safe. You use the equipment, you do this, you trust the equipment. You trust the equipment because it works. Well, when you're 60 feet up in the air and you look down, you want to trust your fear. Your fear is designed to keep you safe. None of that is objective. The equipment is objective. The equipment works. You trust your equipment, and it's the same thing as when we say trust the process, trust your training, trust your understanding, trust your awareness. But we look down and we start trusting our fear. Trust your awareness. Basically, the reason we won't do this, the reason most of us won't move out on our dreams, is because we want to try and play it safe. The reason people don't go for what they really want is because they feel like it's over. They feel like they can't. They feel like it's ridiculous. They feel like it's so far outside the realm of what's possible that they don't even allow themselves the little bitty thought. They don't even allow themselves a little bitty bit of imagination that it might possibly, maybe someday, one day be possible. Have you seen the speech by Jim Carrey? It's an acceptance speech. I think he was getting an award. I can't remember. I was going to try and pull it up for you, but I couldn't find it. But he's a speaker. He's speaking at something. And he's receiving an award, and he said, "My dad used to be a great comedian. He could have been a great comedian, but he didn't think that it was possible for him. So he took the safe option and became an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was laid off from that safe job, and we have to do everything we could to survive." He said that he learned a lot of things from his dad, not the least of all that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on going for what you love. Isn't that true? The timid are caught just as often as the brave. So you might as well try. All right, all right. Let's get down to the next key point here. Turning the page onto turning the page. No, actually, I'm going to go back. I think I missed a point. Yeah, I missed a point that I want to hit. Just below line 95 on page 60, page 58 in my book here, it says, oh, y'all, I didn't notice that all these years I have not noticed that the ebook version is a different numbering from the print book version. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, y'all. All right. But we're basically the lines work though. Line 95, whatever page it's on, line 95. Just below that is a big old bold statement. Okay, see that big bold statement there? It basically says faith is a state of mind which may be induced by auto-suggestion. What? 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 All down the ages, the religionists have admonished struggling humanity to have faith in this, that, and the other dogma or creed, but they fail to tell people how to have faith. They have not stated that faith is a state of mind and that it may be induced by self-suggestion. Okay? So I take a little bit of umbrage with this statement because in my church, we are taught to pray and study, deny our flesh, listen to spiritual songs. We deny our flesh through times of fasting so we can meditate, constantly remind ourselves of God's promises and make decisions according to God's purpose for our lives rather than our current situation. Now, all of those things are really what allow us to have self-suggestion and really be casting off the old programming and begin living in our dreams, begin believing in our dreams, begin reprogramming our mind, all those things. If you ever wonder, well, why do we need to assemble ourselves together? Why do we need to pray? Why do we need to study? Why do we need to do this? Don't take all that. Yeah, it does take all that. If you want to change your mind, if you want to change your mind that only accepts wavy thoughts from your past, only accepts wavy thoughts, constantly getting yourself in relationships where people are taking advantage of you, only accepts wavy thoughts, constantly feeling like you're not good enough for it, even though you really are the most qualified. Okay. So my church teaches those things, and my life experience does not match what he says here. Okay. Because that we were doing these things before I knew that they were business principles. Okay. But I include the comment in our training today because many churches I fellowship with are exactly what he's talking about. You go to church and they say, have faith, get closer to God. And if you truly believe, you will receive, but they don't teach you how to increase your faith, increase your belief, or how to increase your confidence even. Faith, he says here, is a state of mind which may be induced by autosuggestion. And I think the interesting idea, because everyone's given a measure of faith and we have the same measure of faith, but we can develop that faith and we can induce it. We can induce it. That means when we think about inducing something, like think about when you're inducing a birth. So with my oldest, um, with the contractions were taking 3 days, and so they induced his birth. They gave me medicine to make it happen. And so when we're inducing faith, we're making it happen when it doesn't happen on its own. We can induce the expression of faith. We can develop it and we can make it come and we can make it be expressed. And what he's saying here is one way to do that is through this principle of autosuggestion, which is another principle in the book. Actually, it's the next chapter. So we're going to cover that in our private session next week. Okay. Now, before my sanctified folks freak out, I'm not talking about going to a hypnotist. Okay. But we are going to cover how you can reprogram your mind, how you can reprogram your own mind. Henry David Thoreau said once, if one advances confidently in the direction of their dream and endeavors to live the life that they've imagined, they will meet with success unexpected in common hours. So it's like you're pursuing, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're an overnight success. Okay. I mean, we could really sum up the whole book right there. But this whole idea of how do you advance confidently rests on faith. He reminds us, Napoleon Hill reminds us, okay, in line 103, faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. Then he says, that foregoing sentence is worth reading a second time and a third and a fourth and reading out loud. Faith is what gives the dream power and action. Substance. Faith is the substance. This is how I know when you truly believe in your dream, because your faith gives life and power and action to the dream. It gives the dream substance. Substance to advance confidently. It all rests on faith. It's impossible to advance confidently without faith. And that's why I think it's really interesting. If you go to I think it's really interesting to think about how so many of us say we really believe, but our actions say no, you don't. So if you really believe, take the action you need to take. Take the action you need to move forward. Take the action you need to get these lessons. If this is new content for you, go to the link, get the lessons. Okay, over here, if you flip the page, line 167, he starts a whole self-confidence formula. Interestingly, it's not a formula for faith. It's a formula for self-confidence. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. These are what you need to do. This is what you need to do. At the end of the day, you're not going to advance confidently without faith. And I don't think you can advance confidently on blind faith, because the first time things go wrong, the first challenge, blind faith goes right out the window and you rely back on what's familiar. Your doubts, what's familiar. Your safety, say better safe than sorry. What's familiar? Security. What's familiar? Give it up. It's not worth the risk. Think about the stock market. So the stock market was down. And it's probably, it goes up and down, but it's been down. It's been down. Inflation's high, market confidence is low. And it got to a point where people are just like, oh, whatever, I can't take it anymore. And then they sell all their stuff. And then what's going to happen? The market turns around. Every time they do this, the market turns around and it bounces right back up. And then you see time and time again where people miss out because they had blind faith. They didn't have faith based on understanding. They don't understand how the market works. They call themselves having blind faith, but really what they had was faith based on emotions, which the Bible tells us, don't you trust them. But anyhow, they don't have faith based on understanding. They don't understand how the market works. So when it dips, they go back to what's familiar. Play it safe, sell everything. I just want my money in the bank and that's it. I'm done. Stuff it in the mattress. So true. So I've got a worksheet and a cheat sheet for you on this section. So if you find some time, I recommend that you go into the course portal and really dig into this self-confidence formula. Go through the cheat sheet, do the exercises. Excuse me. Do the formula that Napoleon Hill has laid out here on self-confidence formula. And you can download that in your course portal. And I'm going to do a special session on it next week. Okay. And because growing your confidence muscle is very closely related to growing your faith muscle. Because when you grow your confidence muscle, now you have more confidence in God to do what he said he's going to do. And with that understanding, you may not know how this is going to happen, right? You don't see how this is going to happen, but you can exercise faith, which what is faith? Faith is really confidence in the Lord doing what he said he was going to do, y'all. Faith is really, and if you, and in the secular world, and in the context of the book, faith is really confidence that this thing can happen. See how it's all connected? All right. So as we get ready to close out the chapter on faith, remember, you're going to have 72 hours to come back. That's the whole weekend. You're going to have to come back and watch this, give you some time to catch up. And then if you really feel, though, like, I really am enjoying this, life is just overtaking me, I just wish I could just take it and go through it and take my time, then go ahead and click the link below. You'll get the entire program for life for just $99. You'll save $400 off the regular price of the course that's regularly priced at $499. And you'll be able to download the lesson once I process it and extract the MP3, so you can actually listen to this lesson anytime, anywhere. You don't have to be online to listen to the lesson. Okay. And so I think the more we go through the program, the more this makes sense. And so initially you might hear and you might think this stuff is nonsense, but the more you hear it, the more we go through it, the more you hear the science behind it, the more you understand. The more you go through it, the more you understand, and the more you understand, the more sense it makes. Okay. And so we're going to close out with line 577. He says here in line 577, this is the last two lines of the chapter: there are no limitations to the mind except those we acknowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of thought. Keep that in mind, and I'll see you next week. Take care and be blessed.